thank you for allowing me this opportunity today. I've been anxiously awaiting the opportunity to talk to you guys about all the good things that I think we're working on at the middle school. So I know that we're on the back end of already supporting the idea of moving to teaming, and I just want to thank you guys for that. I feel as if from central office and also the school board, this has been very supported from the get-go. We started talking about this, was it 3 years ago? It was before COVID, the listening tour, and the need to do something different, and that's what teachers were screaming. We want to go back to teaming, we need to go back to teaming, and so to know that we are supported through that is very important. And a positive feeling, I think, for the teachers and admin in this building. So wanted to thank you guys for that. And also just the backing to do it right. Teaming is not cheap. It's not, I don't know, there's a lot of resources that go into it, and to be able to do it right and to support that is much appreciated. Our teachers are excited. We've had a couple of PD opportunities so far this semester with the full staff, and we've been meeting with a teaming committee, but they're really excited. There's a renewed sense of hope and just being refreshed, and even our veteran teachers, some of our most veteran teachers are the most excited, I think, to transition back. I've been very clear that it's not the teaming we left that we're going back to. We've talked through expectations and things that are going to change, and they're still very excited. I had a new teacher come to me after it was just like a 25-minute time for them to chat last week, and she's like, there's just a different feeling in the meetings and in the building. So we're all very excited about that. So we're going to go through just a few things today. The purpose of our transition, why are we changing, the process that we've gone through, our journey as a building, and then what our plan is going to be moving forward. So what makes a middle school great? Some of you know me from way back, and some of you don't. I am middle school, it's who I am. I went to school to be an elementary teacher. I did my student teaching in 5th grade and 6th grade, so it was a 5, 6, and it was a K-8 building. And I fell in love with that age of kids, and Pam Milliken offered me my first position as a 6th grade math teacher. And I never looked back. Now, I spent some time at the intermediate school there in the interim, so it started as the middle school, moved to the intermediate, now I'm back at the middle school. But this middle age of weirdness is where I fit. I've lived it as a teacher, I've lived it in intermediate, I've lived it in middle, I've lived it as an assistant principal, I've lived it as a principal, and now I'm living it as a parent. And I value this time in their lives and this experience, and I think that it's super important for their development. I think that COVID has impacted our middle grade kids in a profoundly different way than it's impacted others, because of the need that really lies here in the middle. So that's kind of who I am in my journey, and so I feel like I can speak with some authority, in addition to continuing to read and educate myself on what genuinely matters in the middle. I just feel like I know a lot about kids at this age and what they need and what is working and what's not working. We've been reading, we did a book study, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but some AMLE books and just some books on teaming, and a couple of quotes here. The middle school years are an exciting time as young adolescents are in the midst of profound personal change and identity development. They are growing physically, intellectually, morally, psychologically, and socio-emotionally. Successful middle schools are responsive. They respond to the nature of young adolescents in all of their amazing diversity and are designed specifically to support the developmental needs and social identities of students. That's our job here. We want to academically grow kids. We want them to learn things, but we're really developing who they're going to be, and our structures matter. We've been operating for the last, 6, 7 years, more like a little high school in the way that we operate, and it's had an impact on the building. It's had an impact on our kids. And so I truly believe that what teaming offers is a way to support kids so that we can grow them academically. We're meeting their other needs in a teaming environment that we just can't do as successfully like we're operating right now. Middle schools are different. They need to be different. They can't just be a bigger elementary school or a smaller high school. They really do need to be in tune with adolescents and middle schoolers. I guess it would be 4 years ago, you know, Ben and our first year together, we worked through with having no intention of going back to teaming. Like, that wasn't even in the forefront of our minds. We met with teachers and we talked to kids. We have a compass group of kids that we pull together and we talk to and we survey, and we knew that we needed to kind of rebrand, and it needed to be ours, and we've transitioned from, you know, Pam to Steve and now to us, and it was really important for us to just kind of reset our identity. And so we talked a lot about what is it that middle school kids need to be considered a successful middle school experience, like for it to be, this has been really good. The 3 areas that we identified: they need to connect, they need character development, and they need to grow. So we've got plug in, show you care, and value growth are kind of our things. And I genuinely believe that Ben and I make all of our decisions around those 3 things. And they fit right in line with the guiding principles of the district as well. But specifically for middle schoolers, they have to connect, they have to plug in, they have to have something that connects them to the building, to people. Otherwise, they become very disconnected, and disconnected adolescents that's not productive and it's not successful. We want them to care about each other, we want them to care about their grades, we want them to care about us, we want them to care about their environment, and we want them to care about themselves. Like, that's what kind of the things that we've talked about. And then we want them to grow socially, emotionally, academically while they're here. And we think that that's what a positive middle school experience really is. The intermediate school and middle school 2 years each creates its own sense of kind of disconnect. We've only got 2 years with them, which I don't hate that model, but it does present some new challenges for that kind of, you know, 13 to 15, 12 to, you know, all of those years. And so I think that that's why, another reason why teaming is so important, because we only have them for 2 years. We really need to find a way to very quickly and efficiently connect them to something here. So I know that you guys already support teaming. I'm not selling you on the idea, but I want you to know kind of why we think it's so important. It's more than just a yes. So our journey so far, just to kind of go through where we've been and what we've done. You know, we had the listening tour, we had the task force and the strategic plan. We're moving forward with teaming. So then that came to the building level. We created a teaming committee, and it was voluntary, and we accepted anyone who wanted to be a part of it. So I didn't handpick teachers or people to be a part of the committee. It started with anybody who feels like they can commit. You believe in teaming, you want this to be successful, and you're willing to kind of commit to the process. And we had gen ed, special ed, elective, we have a school counselor and admin on the team. It started a little bit bigger. We've lost a couple of teachers along the way. One went on maternity leave, and one left in the district and moved to a different district. But other than that, that core group has stayed with us and has been an integral part of kind of our decision-making process. We created a timeline and a project sheet. These are the things that we know we need to do. It was a very systematic approach, and we continued to engage with that teaming committee and share out with the staff along the way, so that even if they weren't willing to commit or able to commit to being a part of that process, they still heard about what we were doing. We did some school visits, which were important in this process. We did some virtual visits because we weren't able to get into schools, and we did actually go and physically visit a couple of schools as well. We talked to administrators and teachers from Center Grove, both of the Center Grove middle schools, Brownsburg, Cascade, and Mount Vernon. We took these conversations, we asked them what's working, what do you guys do? We had a set list of questions. We got feedback from teachers, what is it that we want to know about? And so we took some of these core questions and we asked all of the schools and we got feedback. What is what do we need? If we're gonna do teaming right, what is it that we need? I knew I had my ideas because I teamed before. I knew what I thought worked, but I hadn't been out there to see what other people were doing and what was making it work. And then we brought that back, and the teams then created information to share out with staff. These are the takeaways from all of these schools. We weren't ever voting, like this is what we're voting on. We were just gathering information about the things that we really felt were the most important. And then all of the people on the teaming committee, we're going to do this book study as an entire middle school, but the teaming committee started by taking this. It's an AMLE middle level book. It's not about teaming, it's about what's good for middle level kids. They do talk about how supportive teaming is to middle school development and stuff too. So we're going to work through this next year. I know Custer Baker has worked through that same book as a book study as well.
When did we stop doing teaming, and why did they stop it?
So it was when Steve Ahouse took over as principal, they really wanted to increase the time in language arts. And in order to do that, that was one of the things that were sacrificed to be able to double block language arts. Teaming's expensive. To be able to do it well, you have to have the staff to support it. The other pieces, and I'll say this, and I don't want to speak for Steve, but I know he and I shared the opinion that when we left teaming, we weren't doing it well.
Okay.
We were just doing it, PLCs, when we adopted PLCs, we invested, everybody's going to be part of PLC. We're going to prioritize time to meet. Everybody's going to meet on this time. As a district, we're supporting it. These are going to be our questions that we're going to always ask. These are going to be our cycles, and we're going to be intentional about it. It's more than just teaching the same content. You know, you can have a department that all teaches the same thing. It's not a PLC. When you PLC right, it's different. Teaming is more than just sharing kids. And when we left teaming, we were sharing kids. And it was still very much like a little high school that shared kids in a certain pod, but there's so much more. There's so much PD that goes into teachers understanding what teaming really is about and why we're doing it. So
I would also say academically, when we were looking at our scores, at the time of ISTEP really being a very prominent thing, letter grades and everything, we weren't faring well when we looked at across the school districts. And one of the things we saw was the increased time in language arts and a more focused approach to math with PLCs. And so those were the two balances that we tried to get to. So as Steve came in, actually there was a meeting downstairs where Steve's asking, can I add English teachers? And like, yeah, what are you cutting? So we actually did. We ended up cutting some content areas to get that. So it was data, it was PLC, but it was trying to get that additional time to do that.
answer your question? And yes, please feel free to interrupt.
Well, and I would say too, I think there were some consequences of going away from teaming that nobody could have really expected in the building in terms of
Culture.
the breakdown of just how hard it would be to keep communication and culture and behaviors and managing behaviors. I just think that's kind of what we've seen because we kind of came in
the same time?
as it was transitioning and it's progressively kind of eroded communication and you see more behaviors.
Yeah, and I think we'll all say that kids are kids and they always have been. Kids behave differently based on their environment, and our students' environments are changing drastically, and we need to respond to that. So we would not have anticipated, I think, just the way that getting rid of teaming would have impacted the building. Even in just name only, like we were just, like we weren't doing it well, we weren't doing it right, but man, even just sharing those kids did have an impact that we weren't able to anticipate. So we've got the book study, we've talked through kind of our values, our big rocks. These are the things that we are going to prioritize, and then we continually solicited feedback from our staff that were not part of the teaming committee as well. Specifically our language arts teachers, who this was going to have a profound impact on, and our elective teachers, who this was going to have a profound impact on. So I met with them in small groups, and we talked big group as well to make sure that we were continuing to engage all of the stakeholders in this. All right. So then our plan. This is kind of what we've been working through this year. having this year to really work through this well and not jump into something we weren't ready for was super smart. And allowing us that time to just make sure that we were doing things the right way has been very very positive. So these were kind of our big rocks. People in general, we didn't want to riff anybody. We wanted to keep the staff that we had. We wanted to be able to hire well and to make sure that we're continuing to build our teams the right way. So that was a big rock. Time to meet was a huge piece in all of the schools that we talked to. You cannot team well if teams don't have time to meet with each other. They have to be able to intentionally focus on their kids. That's the difference between we just teach the same kids and we team. That time for them to meet together is a crucial piece. And it's also the easiest to get rid of and to justify not having it. So that was a huge one in every school that we talked to. Now they did it differently. Sometimes they gave up different things in order to have that time to meet. But having that time to meet is super, super important. Physical proximity of teams, that was an easy one early on. We knew our teams needed to be together in the hallway, and that meant everybody in the building was going to move. And our teachers maybe they didn't jump up and down with joy. Lori Self-Gross did not want to pack up all of her stuff. But once we got over that hurdle, they all understood, and everybody was on board. That was a very early decision that we made. Equity among teams is also it was a very, very big rock for us, meaning equity of special ed students, high ability students, 504s, ELLs, staff, equity of our staff and spreading out our staff equitably, the experience of each team. And we talked about what does that mean, like how many of our discipline expectations need to be consistent. That was something that we did not have pre-dissolution of teaming. We didn't have any consistent expectations of discipline, I shouldn't say any. Teams kind of operated on their own, and this time in between has really taught us what some of those common structures could really add to teaming. And then also the PLC component, the time to collaborate with PLCs and work with each other, but that time away from teaming has also allowed us the opportunity to really value PLCs in a different way. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to do both, and to do both intentionally and to do both well. The other piece was communication. That was a huge hit after we lost teaming. No one understood how do you communicate in a building that has depended on communication when you're not meeting as teams. Like how do I hear from admin? When are we supposed to know? How do we know what's going on? How do teachers know? How do kids' behaviors get communicated between teachers? And we worked on systems that kind of felt like Band-Aids. Like, oh, this is a problem. Let's put a system in place and fix this. But it's been a lot of Band-Aids along the way. But we've learned a lot about now that we go back to teaming. These are things that we really want to focus on. Staff-to-staff communication, staff to admin, opportunities for ongoing conversations with admin, between staff and students, staff and parents, and also teams and electives. It's been a huge part of our conversation too, is how do we keep electives engaged, and we've got some things that we've done intentionally to keep that as well. And then I've already kind of talked on PLCs, but the collaboration time for teams has to be sacred, time for PLCs has to be sacred, and they both have to be important to be able to be successful and move forward.
So will that be on will you do that on early release day, or do you try to find time during every single day to do that?
Yes, both. That brings us to our next slide, which is the master schedule.
Can I ask you a question on the equity thing?
Yep.
So is there like an accelerated kids are on one team, or you're splitting them up?
We're splitting them up.
I like that. It was so sad not being on the smart team, because everyone knew what the smart team was.
Yeah, I do.
Like the Ben and Sarah Schaefer, like that. You went with them and weren't on the smart team.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Were you the team middle schooler?
Yeah.
Was Penn team there when you were there?
Yeah, he was here when I was here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the reason she's here right now.
That's
That's
the reason.
well,
I'm the reason he's
I
here.
appreciate that.
Yeah, so.
So Rita, before you get into the schedule, how are you going to measure success? So those big rocks, how are you going to, and then what are your checkpoints when you talk, and I understand the PLC and the value of that collaboration, but how, like you said, just getting together isn't enough.
Measurable.
Or it's really tough to measure. So how do you do that? How do you know that things are moving in the right direction?
So I think there are some qualitative and quantitative ways that we'll need to continue to measure. Quantitatively, I expect our scores will increase. I expect that our IXL scores will continue to increase, and I expect that our iLearn scores. We went from iStep to iLearn between the time when we lost teaming to when there have been several changes that have happened in addition to COVID. It's really hard to measure what all happened in that time frame, to be honest. We've had a couple of solid years of iLearn data now. I expect fully that our scores between this year and next year will show that. I also think that through our social emotional therapists that we have in our building and the number of referrals and the things that we're doing, I would expect that we would see some data there as well for the volume of intense need and some of even just the lower level kind of pervasive need, because students are able to get some of those needs met in the teaming environment. So I would expect kind of that SEL piece as well to have some data. I would expect also our behavioral data would improve. There's been a pretty drastic change in the volume of behaviors and the need for behavior interventions, and I would expect that we would see some positive data in the area of behaviors as well.
Okay. So the caution, and I've seen this through my work, when we put some of those measures in, is don't let the teams get discouraged if, say, those test scores, the scores that you expect to rise, if one data point drops.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean it's not working.
Yeah.
It just means there's some extra push or there's something external happening, right, that we just need to get over, right? The system hasn't totally bound to the way we want it, right? So don't let the folks get discouraged on that.
I also think, and that's a good thing to keep in mind, because there are, those quantitative ones are so black and white.
Absolutely.
The qualitative data too, that one of the things, we're going to a conference this summer, the admin team down in Orlando, and one of the things that I understand that they offer is like a pretty thorough building survey, and you kind of do it at the beginning, and then I think it's like maybe a 3-year plan. So I would expect some qualitative, and I guess that's quantitative as well because it's a survey, but kind of more on that. How are people doing? How are our people? Okay. So I've got copies of the master schedule. I'm going to give these to you, but then I'm going to talk through some of the pieces, because it just right now probably looks like a schedule. A lot of colors, a lot of numbers.
Yeah, Ryan?
7th grade on one side and 8th grade on the other.
No, I don't. I'm the colors, no numbers.
Aside from some course names, they're actually very similar, so you could look at one side or the other, and some of the things that I'm going to point out, you'll be able to see. They are the same schedule. So the times are the same and the periods are the same for both 7th and 8th grade. It allows consistency throughout the building, which is very important. There's 46-minute periods, which is about what we're doing right now. Students continue to get 2 electives per semester, which was important for us to not decrease the number of opportunities that kids have. In 7th grade, they have access to STEM, art, PE, and we're introducing multiple PE options next year. We did it this year, we introduced it, and we're going to even expand it more so that kids don't just take 7th grade PE and 8th grade PE. We have PE fitness, we have PE games, and we're going to have a general PE class as well this year, which is great because so many of our middle school kids need to move, and offering them an opportunity to take 2 semesters of PE, 2 different PE classes is very positive. And then they have intro to foreign language in 7th grade as well. In 8th grade, they have STEM, art, ag, which has been very successful. The same 3 PE options, health for high school credit, and then opportunities for foreign language, Spanish, French, and Japanese. So lots of opportunities in the master schedule.
What does Karen call it? What's her other PE class?
Just a PE, just
No, with the special.
Oh, unified PE.
Unified.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's awesome.
we will continue to have the unified, but we're going to expand it beyond PE. It's going to be a unified experience, and they're going to do other things like unified music and unified art and unified cooking and unified all the things. And it's going to be great, and it's an amazing class. And you should come visit sometime because it will make you happy. It's an amazing class. So I'm going to point out a couple of things on the master schedule. So if you look at, on either side, just any place where it says team meeting, we have been able to, and it took a lot of work and a little bit of magic and some great timing to be able to make this happen. Our teams are going to have an opportunity to meet every day, which is amazing. Where it says team meeting there, those 5 teachers, and there'll be 5 teachers on any team, are going to have an opportunity to meet during the school day. So not outside of contract time, like if you can make it work. They're not going to have to give up their personal prep to do all the things that I'm going to ask of them and expect them to do. They're going to actually be given time during their day to do that. So all of the teachers that are on a team will have a team meeting every single day. During this time, the things that I'm expecting from them, they're going to be communicating and meeting weekly with admin and counselor. So every week, 1 day a week, they will have a meeting with their entire team, special ed teacher, admin, and counselor to discuss student concerns, student behaviors, mental health concerns for students, to identify those kids before they fall through the crack, before we get to those intensive interventions that are needed, that we can put some supports in place for those students and continue to force connection on them, which is what they need. We're going to have weekly communication expectations with parents. Each team will be responsible for sending home a newsletter, upcoming assessment dates, and general information and homework assignments and fun things that they're doing and pictures and all of this stuff is going to be sent home through Parent Square every week per team. So they're going to have a day where they're expected to work on that and reach out to parents and talk to them and have positive contacts home. And I'm concerned, we discussed some patterns that we're seeing in all of their classes and we want to let you know. So there's going to be some designated time for that parent communication as well. Time to potentially schedule case conferences where more than one teacher can be pulled for 15 minutes to go and talk at a case conference, where maybe, especially those higher need kiddos, all of their teachers could be present if we can do the case conference during that time, which doesn't always happen, doesn't always work out, but it will be a built-in time that all of their teachers would be available. And just for parent conferences in general, it is next to impossible this year to schedule a parent conference. Can't do it during contract time. It's not possible at all. So to be able to sit down and meet with all of your kids' teachers is huge.
The quality of feedback that the committee will then get and be able to operate off of will be so much more significant in terms of how can we actually help this kid and what does he need, from our opinion as a group of teachers that see this kid a lot.
Intentional communication with elective teachers is going to be a required part of the team meeting time to make sure that we are communicating with those elective teachers and they know what's going on with our kids too. Like if there's a kid that we've talked about, we need to be able to then communicate that with their other teachers as well. Building level communication, so team leader meetings, we talk about stuff that's going on in the building and those team leaders then are able to share out, okay, this is, and we actually sat in on a team meeting at, I can't remember if it was maybe Center Grove, where they were doing this exact thing. Okay, we've got this thing coming up and we need to have this information and we need to get it back to them. So kind of that building level communication so everybody feels like they know what's going on and also everybody has a voice and is able to get that voice heard as well. They're going to be expected to have data conversations weekly for the RTI time that's going to be built in at the end of the day. This is where I think our biggest impact is really going to come. We are going to have an opportunity to really work with intentionally our kids who need extra support. And the time during the day to be able to, you're not having to give up your own time to figure out which kids need help and how we can help them and what are we going to do. You're going to have time every single week with the special ed teacher to talk through how can we provide some academic interventions for this group of kids. This group of kids is going to go here, this group of kids is going to go here, this is what we're going to do, this is the data that we're measuring, here's where our IXL, I remember back in the day talking about like data walls, where you get all the kids' names, and I'm like, you could never do that here, right? You just wouldn't, it's not possible. We can bring some stuff to PLCs and share how our kids are doing in generalities, but this is going to afford us the opportunity to specifically talk about kids. Co-curricular planning. Involving all the teachers, you know, to be able to talk about how the social studies teacher is going to be writing in class, right? You've got all of our co-curricular teachers together, like this is what we're doing right now. Can you pull in that to your writing class? Or can you pull this into, you know, this is what we're doing in math right now. Can you pull it into, this is the fun thing that we're planning together. You know, what if we did this? If the kids that meet this goal, we're going to celebrate them by doing this. So that's another expectation. Effective teaming requires collaboration, time, and intentional focus. It's more than just sharing kids. I want you to know too, I'm going to point out here that, so teachers have the team meeting time. They also still have their personal prep time. If you look down at the bottom, elective teachers don't have that. They just have a prep. They're not a part of a team. They don't need to have those same conversations. They need to receive the information, but they don't necessarily need to be a part of that because they're not part of that academic team. Our elected teachers voted on this schedule. This is what they wanted. There were other options that made prep time equitable.
I will just tell you, I brought this up to Rita, this is one of the things that I think we'll have to monitor. Because the system itself is built on fair and equitable. And with the special teachers not getting a second prep, it's going to be really important that the team time doesn't get seen as a prep.
Yeah.
The other side of this that I'm anticipating is not here at this building, it's at the other buildings. The other buildings saying, hey, I want what they have. So those are things that Rita and I have talked about, just continuing to monitor, and that'll be one of those data points that the prep time, the team time is not a prep time.
It's not.
That they are going to meet. They're not going to be in their rooms by themselves or whatever doing those things. But that this is one of the obstacles that comes up with teams across the nation when you have this concept. So
yeah, it's a different need at our level. Like the needs that we're addressing here are different, and this is how I feel we need to address them. Like I said, our elected teachers selected this model, which was less time for them without kids, but they understood the need for it, for the teams to be able to do the things that they need to do so that our entire building and all of our kids grow and it's what's best for the kids. As far as, I was going to say one more thing about what you just said. Oh, I've been very clear already. This is not a team prep. We're not calling it team prep. This is team meeting time, and it lasts 46 minutes. We're not making copies. We're not, and I understand monitoring that is going to be what's important. I've already communicated it. It's been upfront. I've been clear about it from the very beginning. This is not a prep time. This is not a personal prep time in any way, shape, or form. This is a meeting that you're expected to do for 46 minutes, 5 days a week, because it's what's best for kids, not because it's what is best for adults.
Rita, have you already talked about focus RTI?
Not yet. I have it on here on the next slide. See, you guys are just doing a great job. What you're telling me is I'm talking too long. Yeah, it's fine. I do that. He usually stands up and just starts doing this. So if you see him in the back doing
Good
that,
sequence, that's what I think.
Thank you. All right, so this is what one of the things that I'm actually very excited about. We've always had an RTI time. We've always had enrichment remediation opportunities. The opportunity for us to do this in a much more systematic way with this schedule has me very excited. So if we're a team of 5 teachers, we've got 125 kids that we share. To remediate 125 kids, we've got to have a place for 125 kids to go, right? That means we each get 25 kids. To remediate 25 kids is difficult, right? To work on our really high need kids, if I have 25 kids, I got to figure out, I'm going to work with these 5, what am I going to do with the other 20? Which has always been kind of the challenge in our building is what are you going to do with the kids? So what we're doing is we're turning this end of the day into a focused remediation and enrichment period. Now, we're working through still the details on what qualifies you to not need remediation? How do I know that you need remediation or not? What is it gonna look like in black and white? But for the kids that don't need, we decide don't need remediation, they have an opportunity to select some high interest enrichment activities. So not a study hall, I mean it could be if that's what they chose to do as a student, but it's gonna be more high interest, exploratory things. Maybe Mark Callan does a ceramics unit with some kids who sign up for his enrichment class. All of our elective teachers are working right now to create some fun opportunities for kids. We're thinking it's probably going to be like a midterm cycle, so every like 4.5 weeks we cycle through, and if you qualify for the next round, which also then encourages kids to do their work and to be invested, which is difficult for middle schoolers when grades mean nothing. Parents aren't necessarily holding our kids accountable to doing their homework and to their grades, and they don't even know what their grades are, and they're like, what's power school? And then they also don't, our kids don't understand GPA, they don't understand credits, they're like, middle school doesn't matter, it doesn't count. It doesn't count until I get to high school. So it gives them a little bit of motivation if it's a work versus like ability situation. So then they choose. Maybe I'm going to work with the other art teacher to paint on the walls, or maybe we're going to do a different unit in PE. Maybe it's not PE related at all. Maybe it's dance. Maybe it's the Mats for the Homeless started out as an enrichment opportunity. So we have all sorts of different things that these teachers are going to be creating, a game club, whatever. If I get to go there, if I do qualify to go there, and our word choice and how we present this is going to be very important as well, then I will be away from the team. So let's say even 50 kids get to go to enrichment. Now our team has 75 kids to split. And so maybe of those 75 kids, maybe we're still, will versus skill. We've got a handful of those kids that are just not doing their work. Maybe they need to just be in a teacher-led study hall where we're working on those assignments that we don't have done, and we're really, working to stay up to date on doing old assignments. Maybe that's it, and maybe that's, 20 or 30 of our kids. And then we've got our other teachers, our math teacher and our reading teacher and our writing teacher and our special ed teacher and maybe a special ed assistant that are able to split those kids up and work with 5 kids or 10 kids or 15 kids on a skill. And we will have the opportunity to look at gaps, like they're at a 2nd grade level, and also current skills. Like this is what we're working on right now, and we need to pre-teach so that you are more successful in what we're doing tomorrow. So there's a lot of opportunities. It also sounds really messy right now because there's a lot that we're going to be doing over the summer when we have some time to sit down and actually spend a day working through a lot of the details. But I'm very excited about that. This is also where our high school kids, the kids that are taking high school credit, Spanish and French and Japanese, we've presented this as an opportunity for them. This is a high school credit class that you're taking. In the past, it's replaced an elective. But for next year, it's not going to replace an elective. So those kids who are going to be taking Spanish and French and Japanese aren't going to have to give up an elective. Instead, they'll take it during this time. So they just won't be part of the team experience. They won't be part of the enrichment experience. They'll be doing their enrichment in high school. And I've said, you're in a high school class. Like, we're not going to pull you from that because you need to make up a test. Like, this is you're basically going to the high school. It's an honor, it's an opportunity for them. So that's another thing that's going to be during that time period.
On the skill kids, I get the will kids. I think they should be sad they don't get to do pottery.
I know.
On the will kids, or the skill kids, how do you keep them from not getting their feelings hurt?
So we have a couple things, and that was actually brought up in our last teaming committee meeting. How do we do that? It needs to not be a punishment.
Yeah.
It needs to be an opportunity. It needs to be fun for them too. We need to have opportunities for those kids to celebrate successes and do some fun things. We're going to add in some team experiences during this time as well. So maybe on a Friday, the entire team doesn't do enrichment or remediation, and we all go out and do something fun. So there will be times that it's different. But honestly, we really need to get these kids caught up. And so that does need to be our top priority, but I think it's in our approach and how we work with them.
Yeah, I think we can be, I don't know, you talk about plan, do, study, and adjust. I think as we go on, we might find, maybe what's success for one kid in skills and his growth, maybe he's not at what we would want him to be, but maybe that's a needed reward. So I think there's still a lot to work through about how you make it equitable too.
Yes.
The other high school credit class will still have geometry and algebra for the kids.
And health.
But it's built into those are built into the team concept side. It's an interesting conversation because the state now is coming in and saying, instead of letter grades, this GPS cycle, you get credit at the middle level for giving high school credit classes as a school that providing opportunities for kids. So Rita and Ben are trying to look at that concept. How do you balance that? Because in a way, if you look at the purest team setting, would not have any high school structures. But in this one, the state's saying, and we believe it's a good thing, because I will tell you that when I talk to parents away, they're like, what opportunities do we get at this age so that we can move forward at the next level? So we're still providing high school credit in this model that we have.
And that's one of the things in the teaming books that they do talk about that. In order to do both, you have to be creative. You have to figure things out. You've got to be creative in how you offer them, because they don't marry well. That's why high schools don't team.
When I was a middle school principal, we shipped our kids to the high school. That's how they got it. Team stayed focused in the building, and we started, if you were in Spanish class or in math class, you started your day at the high school, and we bused you back to keep the kids separate. So that.
And some places still do that.
This is a cycle that we'll get this, that the kids get to still play together.
Yeah. All right, and then the last thing, I talked about some magic in making this, and some good timing. So the state has said that we're going to be teaching civics in middle school for a semester, and them announcing this.
That is what they said.
They did.
That is what they said.
But that plan to study adjust
Yes.
just took place this week.
Yes, it did.
You know what we're talking about.
I don't know.
The state came out just yesterday and said that the civics class may have to go to 6th grade. So
Instead of or in addition to these classes?
instead of, because the author of the bill wanted it there. And so it's kind of how they're making sausage. So right now it's kind of in that promulgating stage. So Brooke is already on it and talking to the state, and then we're going to work with our lobbying group of KGR to see what we can do as well.
Please do.
So that's a great example of the magic.
Now you see it.
Comes and goes.
Now you know.
The good news is we're moving forward with civics as an 8th grade class. Go ahead.
So the magic of having civics. So it was supposed to start, we're going to have these civic standards and we're ready to start next year. And then it was like, just kidding, you're not going to have the standards. And we're like, so we really need this civics spot to make teaming and team meetings and to make our master schedule work. Can we hire early? Hiring early is one of the best things that you can do in general. I think hiring good teachers is like our most important job. Getting really good, hiring and retaining really good quality rock star teachers. And when you can hire early, you have a better pool, right? So we hired civics teachers super early, like a whole year early, to get them on. We hired 2 rock star brand new teachers, and we've transitioned some other people that I'll explain in just a minute to fill those 3 civics positions, right? But we don't have civic standards yet. So how can we start teaching civics a year early if we don't even know the standards? So we decided that we're going to, and this is actually going to be a long-term plan as well, we're going to offer a class called ECC, Exploring College and Careers. And this is a class that I'm actually very, very excited for. We are going to next year offer it in both 7th and 8th grade. And then the following year, it would just be an 8th grade class. But this is a class for kids to learn the things that we just don't have time in content area classes to teach them. Learning style inventories. What is it that you are passionate about? How do we stay organized in school? How do we keep a planner? How do we, and then thinking about pathways at the high school. What's a GPA? What does that mean if I fail a course in the high school? We have a lot of kids that end up at high school, they don't even know that if you fail a course, you don't just get to go on. Like, it doesn't work that way in the high school. So a lot of those kind of college and career, readiness, interests, and just even what after high school? Like, what are you good at? C9 visits, having speakers come in. Jill Lizelle, if you know Jill, has taught math and then she moved to social studies. She said to me, I really am very interested in moving to civics. It's where her passion is. And she was very excited to make this move. And she's really excited about this class as well, and some of the community connections and the things. It's very open, you know, it's kind of a very open class. And so we're actually working, we've got our 2 new people that came and met with us, and we've got a summer PD day that we're gonna do, and they're really already working through what does this class look like for 7th graders, what does it look like for 8th graders, and then how do we transition it to just an 8th grade class. But so that's what that civics hire did for us. It allowed us a 5th person, which is great. It allowed us to keep all of our language arts teachers and not have to riff anybody, and create this, you know, magic number of 5, which is what we really need for this successful teaming in the middle school. It also allows us to keep our class sizes under 30, which is great. That was another priority for us, is reasonable class sizes. So next year, no civics. Following year, civics, maybe, in 8th grade with the ECC split. In 7th grade, we'll be doing a writing class. And so what we have this year is writing ECC in 7th grade, writing ECC in 8th grade. And so that'll be the transition that following year.
Rita, I just want to add to that civics, the team of civics teachers will also be taking the standards, which are now drafted by the commission, developing a structure, a curriculum with those standards, and adopting their resources as well. We did not do that as part of the social studies adoption because we did not have the standards. Now that we will have the standards this summer or early fall, that will be part of their work as well, is preparing that course for the following year.
And it's been a conversation that Brooke and I have had a lot about what does this course look like. I don't want it to just be another social studies class for 8th graders. It needs to be different. You can teach civics in a much different way and a different approach, and that's what having these 2 teachers on board. They're excited, they're young, and they're really, you know, and I think it's going to be a really good partnership there. So just so you kind of know the shift here, we have 10 full-time language arts teachers, 5 in 7th grade, 5 in 8th grade. With teaming, we only need 6. 3 in 7th and 3 in 8th. So those 4 people, one of them is licensed in social studies, so we moved them to Jill's spot. And he's excited about that. He's excited about writing and social studies, which is great. So he's going to take that spot, so that leaves us with 3. Those 3 teachers are going to teach writing. So we have 1 full year of reading and reading reconsidered, which does write in reading. Does a lot of great things. I love that curriculum. I love that we adopted it. I think it's great. Then we're going to have a semester in 7th grade of writing and a semester in 8th grade of writing. So those writing teachers will teach a semester of each next year. So that's where those people went. We didn't have to hire 3 civics teachers. We only ended up hiring 2 civics teachers.
Didn't you have an English teacher leave though, and we didn't fill it? We filled it with the social studies? When the teacher left this semester, we brought in someone for a semester. That person's not staying.
No, we hired
Correct. But
a
the
new teacher to fill that position.
I knew English?
Yes,
Yeah.
so we have 9 English teachers. We went from 10 to 9. So we have 6 reading and then 3 writing. Any other questions about the master schedule or anything? All right. The last thing that I would like to discuss is a change in admin structure in our building. I want to propose that we do away with the dean position in our building and we replace it with an assistant principal, so that we can have a sustainable system that loops with our kids and supports them at a grade level. I would like to see a 7th grade assistant principal and an 8th grade assistant principal. The 7th grade assistant principal would do 7th grade discipline and additional administrative duties. And the 8th grade assistant principal would do 8th grade discipline and additional administrative duties. They would support their grade level. They would go to weekly meetings with their grade level teams. So Ben, if he was the 7th grade assistant principal, he would meet with Team A, Team B, and Team C every single week. He'd be able to talk about behaviors. He'd be able to talk about students. He'd be able to partner with the 7th grade counselor to be a team to support our growing number of kids with behavioral and emotional needs. So that's my proposal. I've looked at money. There's a difference from what our current dean makes to the assistant principal position that would mirror where she would start. There's a difference of $18,868.44. We have an in-school suspension position right now that we added this year. That pays $19,881. It would be my proposal that we would shift out that in-school suspension position in order to be able to have 2 assistant principals at the middle school. One of the things that having a dean now versus having a dean 10 years ago, the job's different, behaviors are different, and the response to the behaviors is different. That person on an island that's not a successful structure for our building. They need to be able to collaborate, and they need to have a partner. We are better when we are able to work with someone else, when we're able to talk things through and be on the same page and balance each other. One person isn't the best at all the things. And when you are able to intentionally PLC with even just one other person, you can realize the things that maybe you could do better, or that probably wasn't a good approach. But when you are so consumed with only doing discipline all day long, there's no opportunity for that. Our counselors PLC together. They talk to each other even though they don't have the same kids. They talk to each other about kids and about systems and about ideas, and that's what I want to see 2 assistant principals in this building doing. Meeting with their grade levels, meeting with their counselors, and then being able to PLC and collaborate together to support our kids so that our kids are better, so that we are able to be consistent and responsive and appropriate to what our middle school kids need.
I think with PLCs too, I think the return on investment of making a dean and administrator is now they can also provide instructional leadership, whether that's special ed leadership or leadership. We can spread out leading PLCs among 3 of us instead of 2 of us, which is really more focused, I think.
Yes, and speaking of SPED, our SPED teachers will loop, they do loop. Our counselors already loop, and adding an administrator to that looping cycle will allow an entire team of kids who are representing our most vulnerable kids in lots of areas, academic, social, emotional, behavioral, to be able to loop and support those same kids year to year. So that's what I'm asking for from the board. I would really like an opportunity to change the admin structure in our building. I know that
I'd like
that's
to
a big
have one
ask.
thing on that. So it's really 2 positions we're eliminating. We have a behavior interventionist that everybody got back. It was one of the projects we did in like 2014. We brought the in-school suspension because COVID numbers went crazy with kids acting up. I think high school and middle school, A and CBIS all got an intervention person. So what I told Rita was, what you're really going to cut is a behavior intervention person who's been there for 14 years. You decide how you do your team around that. So when you're looking at, when we just added, because in your mind I'm thinking, well, you guys just added a spot and it costs money, and now you're taking it away. You didn't really help yourself. What we really did is cut the behavior interventionist. And then Rita can decide what they're going to do with that person. So that's how we're playing this as you travel forward. So she's going to then modify it to meet her needs and get that additional dollars that she needed. Because I told her she had to balance out because like Christy and Andy and and Ryan and Becky, as you guys have come on, the board has been very reluctant to add admin over anything. Like add teachers, add staff, don't add admin. And so on the outside, when you're seeing, hey, we're adding admin, as you go to team, people are going, what's the deal with that? So that's the one thing I've challenged at them. Like, if you're going to propose adding admin, well, to me, and then passing it and recommendation coming to you, what did you cut to get that? So that's really what we cut's that behavior intervention person, and then they've then modified it.
So David, to that point, is the dean considered an admin?
No.
No? Okay.
We've never, so that happened last, remember when we did referendum, we said we're not gonna have admin referendum?
Right.
And so Brian Harbin is at CBIS as the dean, but he's really just a teacher that instead of a classroom, he goes and does that. Jenny was a classroom teacher who got moved into there. So they are not seen at the high school, they're not admin.
So with the, I mean, it won't happen the first year probably, but you hope to see less behavior, so you wouldn't have the need for that, to where it would all even out, and then the assistant principal would be the one taking care of that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then my next question is the assistant principal and the counselor, are they going to like stay, like do 7th and then stay with those kids in 8th? Are they gonna do that? And yes. Okay.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And I think that like with more and more, with the growth that we're expecting to have, having 2 is, I love it. Yeah, I do. So.
And these years are hard too. Like, they're the hardest years, you know, like.
Yeah, nobody wants to go back to middle
No.
school.
No, seriously, I mean, like, hearing this makes me wish I had a middle schooler.
Aw.
I love it, I do, I love it, I love it.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited. I'm sad. My daughter's going in 8th grade, so I've got one going in 9th and one going in 8th. And I'm sad that they missed out on that full. Like, I wish we could have done it a couple of years ago, but
Great job.
thank you.
So Rita, I think then having this slide, and maybe even to say, here's where we're at today, showing where the dean is, if you bring that into the board in June, as an action, or will it be a discussion topic, right? Lay your plan out, and then you could come back in if you're asking for this, right? And it would be a July action item to.
Traditionally, we just allow the staff to take place if they can do it.
Okay.
We don't have, as long as you guys kind of give the approval of it, then
Okay.
we don't have to do that.
I was thinking about our past that we've said no
Yeah.
additional admin. Right, this is going to change our approach on that.
It is, but if she can show the difference in the money.
Well, and that's why I said
Yeah,
bring it to the
yeah,
board,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, so it's there,
So
people
there's
can
not
say,
there,
yeah, like she's really only
Right.
shifting the money from this position to that position, not.
We could definitely come in and bring it to you. I mean, this would actually be the discussion
Right now.
side of
Yeah.
life right now.
Yeah.
So you could come in June and just say, hey, remember we talked about this, just
Right.
what other questions do you have? Just put this slide back up and say, and put the dollar amount, like here's the dollar amount,
Yeah.
here's, and
That
admin's
that way
like,
it just gets on the
Yeah.
public record
Yeah.
that we've got,
Yeah.
that we did the due diligence from the.
I can't imagine many parents of middle school kids being upset. And most, everybody in the district is going to have a kid eventually,
no. Well,
you know.
here's where my mind goes. CBIS is the exact same size kid. I mean, we're talking 10 kids difference. We do not have difference. They're going to teaming. They have a dean. So are we going to be telling them like, hey, you guys get a second principal? That's kind of where I'm at as we travel forward in this, because right now we have not allowed them to do that. They still have the structure of Brian being a teacher on special assignment, and their problem is going to be a little bit bigger because their whole salary, they'd have to come up with the whole salary, because Brian is built on the referendum. Remember, we brought Brian in that space, not as a teacher to help with behaviors and mental health, it's a referendum spot. So if we say no referendum dollars can go to admin, which we did, and we're gonna stick to that, Cheryl's gotta come up with $80,000 on her own.
Was she gonna have, what about Cindy Mathis retiring? What was her position?
Tammy
Oh,
Snyder
that's
moved
right,
into her
that's
spot.
right, yeah.
So she would have to cut some other spaces. So that's where I'm at on that. So I do think it's really important that we show, here's what she did.
Yep.
It allowed it to function.
Yeah.
And if Cheryl comes and says, I can give up 80, she didn't have 80.
Well, I'll tell you too, I don't want to speak for Cheryl for sure. I came from a 6-8 world, right?
Yeah.
I came from, I know, and they have their behavior concerns are emerging, just like ours are, but it's different. The behaviors that you see in 5th and 6th grade are different than the behaviors that you see in 7th and 8th grade. Our behaviors that we see in 7th grade are different than the behaviors that we see in 8th grade. And so the need is different because the age of the kids is different, even though the size of the buildings is the same.
Absolutely.
So she may not want to do that. A dean might be enough for their building to support their behaviors. That may be
Yeah.
sufficient.
I just think we need to lay a solid foundation so that the community sees that we're not just adding, because once again, we haven't grown, right?
Right.
Well, what's grown are special education numbers by a lot, and everything else has kind of remained constant. And where we've been able to fill back in dollars right now are ESSER. And in 2023, 2024, those go away. So if we don't start growing kids again, it's going to be tough. So this is a good model that she was sharing with us. It makes sense. You know, when I was middle school principal, I had 3 assistant principals, 1 for each grade. And, you know, we had 1,500 kids in the building. I mean, it was ridiculously, sorry to middle school. It was, so this is a really good model that she can sustain and create what she wants to do. Well thought out. They've done a really nice job of thinking through this thing through.
Thank you. It's a piece of cake.
Exactly.
I haven't lost any sleep over this.
We've got about 10 minutes left. Do you guys have any questions before Ben or read it?
I just think this is great. Thank you for all your hard work.
What are
Ben's
the,
really the brains behind the whole operation. It's all him. He just sits
the
back and
spreadsheet.
quiet.
you made the spreadsheet. What are these names? Are these like, how like,
So this past year, we tried to bring back elements of teaming in terms of the fun social aspect. So 7th and 8th grade are all different language versions of the name bear, and we had we called it a house system. So they have fun competitions and
like Harry Potter kind of?
yeah, kind of, yep, exactly,
Awesome.
same concept. And so they have fun competitions throughout the year. And downstairs by the fish tank, you'll see kind of the scoreboard, and then I don't know if we started putting in there. They've decorated it a little bit. There's a traveling bearhead trophy.
So this is bear in different languages?
Yep.
How cool.
Yeah.
Team Loki's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no blue team because that would be
Unfair.
We had a team try this year. Like,
Yeah.
can we please get rid of yellow and make it blue? I was like, no.
No, absolutely not.
Keep yellow. Yellow's a great color.
Alright. Any other questions for them?
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you.
And we are adjourned. Thank you.